My first poem is called Trials and Tribulations, and then my second poem is called Product of My Environment. So I'm just going to get right into it. I've been on trial facing my tribulations. Lately, I've been trying to get back in touch with God, but I ain't been coming to any revelations. I just been escaping, chasing, going somewhere far to end up in the same place, and it's crazy. Cause I feel my feet going faster, and yet they keep moving at the same pace. Looking in the mirror lately, and if I'm being honest, I ain't been recognizing my own face and my thoughts. Been going to a whole new space. Somewhere darker than what I'm used to. Sometimes I want to act like the old me, and sometimes I refuse to. Screaming and yelling the same way I used to, and I know I'm not perfect, cause I was used to. I lost myself just so I wouldn't lose you. And maybe that's why I'm different, because I never really felt my feelings and I never let them sink in. And maybe it's for catching up to me because it's been feeling like I'm sinking. So I just lay awake thinking. And sometimes I even turn to drinking. I want to be alone. Me and my friends ain't even been linking. Even God been sending me the voicemail, but I'll still speak after each ring I sing. I'm stronger than what you made me, but I've been brave ever since you saved me. I know meeting you in the afterlife isn't honest, and so for now, I'm gonna keep it real and I'm gonna keep it honest. It's clear. My outer shell is here. However, I am not. I'm looking back at all my mistakes and all the times I fought. I hung on to a mental cliff by my fingernails, grasping at any source of peace I could. I believed pain was my only way to glory, and so every time I hurt, I thought that I should. And now I'm past 21 and yeah, I've had my fun. But sometimes I look into the mirror and I run. Sometimes sinning was the only answer. I had trouble reflecting God's son, looking back at all my regrets and all the worst things that I've done. It felt like I had a million chances, but at the same time, it felt like I had none. In truth, I'm scared of the woman that I will soon become. I find comfort in the glimmer of the moon, wondering if I'll ever again see the sun. I know I said I'm scared for my future, but maybe I'm just scared of tomorrow. I'm scared it will bring me the same feelings of sorrow. Do I have to give back all the love that I borrowed? Old memories of people I knew, old memories of things that I've seen. Sometimes I want to be nice and I just end up being mean, whether it's to myself or the others in my path. Lately, my future is bubbling up and so is my past. Looking at the ground like my neighbor's dead flowers. The clock on my wrist is moving slower. It doesn't feel like the usual minutes and hours. Is time real at all? Maybe it's as real as you and I. It just feels so odd now, watching all these years pass me by. Thank you. Now I'm going to do my second one, Product of My Environment. I am a product of my environment. That phrase was always repeated. But what happens if I stood up? Will everyone remain seated? I am a product of my environment, and that's how I'm treated. And if you told me enough times, sure, I might have believed it. I didn't see the devil in a man's eyes. I had to hear orphan babies cry. But I am not those things. I look at my environment, and I see brick buildings. It's easy to feel small, and somewhere that seems so big, but it always felt so infinite when I was a kid. But what happens when I look at my environment and I see the trees, the flowers, the birds, and the bees? Am I still my environment? I see water that's as calm as God's promise. I see a sky that's as limitless as my mind. And every time I remember where I came from, it reminds me of myself when I was young. So I'll be the projects, the bodega, and the liquor store. But that never stopped me from finding that open door. I can achieve so much despite where I live. You'd be surprised at all the love I have to give. So who am I really if I am a product of my environment? Thank you.
Hola, hola, everyone.
What's up?
What up? Jazzy, thank you for your poem, for your powerful words, and and moving the room. I can say, just in today's times, especially today, how hard it is, and to be a person that looks like me and who has kids and partner and all that stuff. And it's hard sometimes to be, feeling like you want to be in space, but hearing your words today, it just, made my heart feel really good, put a smile on my face. And this is why I do these things, because of voices like yours. Thank you for that. Welcome everyone to Tea Talk number 4 of our 2026 series on the pulse of the morning, the future of African-American oratory. Thank you for coming here in space. And quickly, I just want to go over some logistical things before we get started with continue with the program. We have some exits back here, that way. Thank you. Speak louder. We have some, I don't know. We have some exits back here, that way. And then also, if you need to use the restrooms, they're out through these doors to the left. So just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Andres Mejia, he, him pronouns. I live in the Seacoast with my 2 kids and partner. I'm a director of organizational learning and talent development for the New Hampshire Trail Foundation, a BLM New Hampshire board member, a former Black Heritage Trail New Hampshire board member, and the former director of DIJ for SAU 16. I want to thank the audience for being here in this room and also online. Thanks for showing up, for taking your time for these important discussions. Thanks to our volunteers and sponsors who help put this space together and these events together. And I also want to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. So we have to just let folks know that. And for all of us online and in this room with us today, to be here in this space, I ask that we're here in this space. We come to this space with our open hearts and open minds as we hear the voices of our panelists today. Another quick reminder in your pamphlets and a link in the chat, there is a survey. If you can please take that at the end of today's session. The input that you put on that survey allows us to make our events better and for better fundraising for the future. And to move us on to get our continue our show and get our show started, I'd like to introduce our host, who is an awesome human being, making New Hampshire a better place in every room, in every space he walks in, and also a really great friend of mine, Kevin Pajaro-Marinez, who's the Assistant Director of Equity and Inclusion at Phillips Exeter Academy.
Yeah. Wow. How are you doing? Yeah, can folks hear me okay in the space? Can we all say hi to the people on Zoom? Hi, Zoom. Yes, sometimes the Zoom rooms don't get a lot of love in these hybrid events, and I think it's important that they know we see them. Yes? Yeah. Okay, amazing. So as you all know, my name is Kevin Pajaro-Marinez, not Pajaro, not Pajamas Marinara. So important we get it right, okay? The pronouns I use are he, him. I am the Assistant Director of Equity and Inclusion at Phillips Exeter, the inaugural, my dad. Yes. Here's the first. Yes. And today I have the honor and privilege of being the host of this panel with these 2 brilliant guests who will bless you with their wisdom, expertise, creativity, and all things. And they will have their time to tell you a bit more about themselves, and then followed by a dialogue that we'll have thereafter. But if you all would indulge me for a bit, I wanted to help frame today's program with a few words and just some meditations that I have about today's theme. Is that okay? Yeah. Amazing. So, as you all might know, hopefully you've read the pamphlet to today's event, but today's theme is titled Echoes of Power, the Tradition of African American Oratory. So I want to acknowledge first and foremost that our guests today, our panelists, in addition to myself, are representing Blackness across the diaspora, and I think that comes with specificity on the power and significance of storytelling. The distinction that I'm making is not to take away from the legacies of African American history, it's very clear. Instead, it represents the unquestionable interconnectedness of the Black struggle in the U.S. and beyond, because as we know, the legacy of slavery and anti-Blackness is global and transnational. Storytelling move far beyond stringing words together in ways that craft messages. An element of stories. The stories represent multiple ways of knowing, intergenerational wealth in the form of wisdom, expertise, and spiritual significance, and help us think critically about who and what we have been taught to value. Even more importantly, stories have the power to move people towards action. I feel incredibly honored to help host a conversation with our panelists in the hopes that even in the midst of our turbulent political moment, that we feel moved to take action in the midst of uncertainty. One last thing that I want to share before we get into the introductions of our panelists today is that even within the legacy of Blackness as a whole, even in the midst of dehumanization happening across so many situations of violence, marginalization, microaggressions, Black people have been able to leverage storytelling as seeds that have and continue to sprout visions of possibility. Something really beautiful about Black folks having the capacity and the willingness to engage in vulnerability through storytelling, especially in a world committed to stifling our collective brilliance, wisdom, and expertise. This conversation will hopefully move us away from merely romanticizing the resilience that Black people exemplify every day and bring us more towards how narrative, oration, storytelling help us to reimagine and practice more expansive and creative ways of thinking and being. And so with that, I've been talking at you all for a little bit, but it's really important to name that I'm in conversation today with two amazing people on the right to me, or on the right of me. And I wanted to quickly introduce them before they have the opportunity to share a little bit about themselves with you. And then what will follow will hopefully be a generative discussion around some questions that I created that were customized in particular for our brilliant people here. Okay? Does that sound good? So on my right, you just heard her, an amazing, incomparable poet, Jazzy. Let's give it up for Jazzy. Jazzy is an educator, and let's be clear, being an educator in our current moment, okay, like I'm serious. She is a teacher, a writer, and a spoken word artist. And then right next to Jazzy, we have the indomitable Grace Kindeke. Go ahead, give it up for Grace. Yes. Grace is a multi-hyphenate, but at the risk of sharing too much, I'll just name that she is serving as the program director for the New Hampshire Center for Justice and Equity. And I will now pass it along in the same order that I presented them. So Jazzy first, to just talk a little bit about who she is, give you an introduction. Grace will follow, and then I'll get into my questions. Is that all right? Okay, well, y'all had no choice. I just had to ask, though.
So my name is Jazzy Mota, but I go by Jazzy. I just graduated college this previous May. I graduated from Keene State, a double major in secondary education and English.
All right.
Yeah.
I work in the Manchester School District right now. I performed a few places, mostly in Keene, but sprinkled around. I performed at the Outstanding Woman New Hampshire ceremony, and I also performed at the 603 Writers Conference. So those are the most recent ones that I've been in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hopefully more to come. Yeah, it's mostly about me. I don't know what else is true.
You can share as much or as little as you want. Nope.
Yes, and I'm also a club advisor at the school that I work at. It's called Open Minds in Action. We're an activism club. We work together. It's a lot of it is student led, but they so graciously chose me to be with them. Yeah, it's student led. They're really great. They come in with things that they care about, and they get to talk about it with each other and form immediate change and action, which I think is so amazing and awesome. Especially to have so many young people, teenagers that care about the world and speaking their truth and telling their stories. It's really important. So I'm very grateful to be able to be a part of that as well.
Awesome.
So hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Is this mic working? Okay, wonderful.
Speak louder. Oh, I can absolutely speak louder. That has never been an issue. So good afternoon, everybody. I am really excited to be in conversation, both with these amazing people, but honestly also in conversation with all of you, because even though we won't all be talking to each other, we'll still be in conversation with each other. So I'll share a little bit about myself. I often feel like I've been telling the same story. Hi. I'm just so happy to see so many familiar faces. I feel like I've been telling the same story for many, many years now, but it's still, I hope that for those who have heard it before, it is okay. And for those who've heard it for the first time, I hope that it was interesting to you. So my name is Grace Kindeke. I was actually born in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm a proud millennial. So I came to the United States when I was a toddler with my mother. And when I came here, first of all, I had no idea what the heck was going on. She just put me on a plane and then I landed in New Hampshire. And I often tell people that my mom did everything. She found every other place to live except for any of the major cities on the East and West Coast. Somehow, some way, she moved to Manchester, New Hampshire. And so I am the proud daughter. I come from a matrilineal line. I come from an tradition as many other black people and black communities come from as well. When I was being in New Hampshire, I just thought I was just kind of regular, maybe a little different because none of my peers, none of my friends came from other countries. Most of them were born here. But for the most part, I kind of just lived life as a regular kid, getting ready to go to school, graduate high school, go to college. And when I was 18 years old, on my way, getting ready to go off to college because I wanted to get out of New Hampshire. I wanted to be an artist. I was ready to be a fashion designer, go to New York or San Francisco and really try to make my mark in the world. And unfortunately, I found out that I was undocumented. And so that completely changed the trajectory of my life. I'm 38 years old now, and I've been a U.S. citizen. I was able to adjust my status eventually. I was on DACA for many, many years. I was able to eventually adjust my status, and I've been a U.S. citizen for 5 years, about 5 years now. Thank you. But that experience, that journey has really shaped and reshaped my life in ways that I never would have been able to predict when I was 18 years old. And so again, if you had asked me at 18, hey, Grace, would you be doing immigration activism? Would you be doing social justice and political advocacy? I'd be like, no, are you joking? I'm going to be living in New York, schmoozing with high-powered artists, and that's the life that I was going to lead, right? But life has a way of giving you exactly what you need in order to realize who you truly are, right? So we all are designed in the image and the likeness of the creator. And it's as I've gotten older and I've been able to do this really amazing work with people like Kevin, with Andres, with some of you that I see in the crowd, I have become to really understand what my purpose is and how all of those pieces of me and those roots and that legacy from which I was born really were woven together. So I am very happy to be here with you all. I think there's more that I could have said, but I'm a little bit nervous, but I think we'll all weave it in together when we talk a little bit more.
Yeah, let's clap it up. That's fine. Yeah, that's what you got. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now we're moving into the dialogue portion of the event. I'm a little bit jealous of you all being in the audience because I have to ask these questions, but I really wish that I was over there so that during the Q&A I can be like, hey, I have questions for Jazzy and Grace. So I hope that you all have questions to ask our panelists after hearing them share just a little bit about themselves. I know I'm bursting with different things I want to share, but I have some stuff I have to stick to. So I'm going to honor that. So the way that this will work is we're going to ask you all to please hold your questions until the Q&A period. So that will hopefully give you all an opportunity to process some of what you're hearing, maybe write some things down that you would like to ask. And then during that time, we'll field questions from both the Zoom room and our in real life audience. Is that okay? Amazing. Love that. So we'll start off with the first question. And look, for people who haven't seen me moderate a panel before, I'm not your run-of-the-mill, I ask the question and wait, right? Somebody said obviously, thank you. I, I do my due diligence, and so I actually did a lot of reading and thinking to customize these questions based off of the many things that you heard our co-panelists share. So my hope is that the questions feel relevant to the context that they're coming from and the things that they've shared with me that you have heard today, so that it feels more like you're getting to know them and that we actually feel like it's a conversation more than a sterile environment where I ask and they tell and then that's it. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So first question. I'm providing context and then I'll get to the question. There are actually two distinct shows of storytelling that I want to highlight that I thought about before for this event today. And so in an article about the significance of Black people telling their own stories, Andrea Collier shares how stories help us fulfill this biological wiring of wanting to be seen by other people, right? We're social beings. We want to feel seen by others. So she also hints at the importance of how Black storytelling functions as a way for Black people to understand their position in the world, as well as make sense of what is happening both socially and politically around them. With this in mind, it makes sense to me that the legacies and histories of Black storytelling are currently being stifled by people in capital E power, our administration, as an example, precisely because of how this information can shift someone's consciousness around the foundational creed that all men are created equal, when in practice, there's maybe more to be left desired. So with that, the question that I wanted to ask both of our panelists to start with is, how storytelling played in your own life, and how do you think stories help Black people reclaim power?
Well, for me, I'm an English major. I'm an English major, so I've always loved stories and storytelling. When it comes to me, sometimes I can be, I don't want to say, well, I can be shy, but I feel like I get my truth across the best when I storytell. And the way I do that is through my poetry and my writing. So I feel like storytelling has kind of been woven into every facet of my life, especially just because it makes me feel so good. It feels like a form of therapy for me. And I feel like with some people of color might feel like they don't always have this space to talk about the things that they need to talk about. So I feel like with storytelling, it makes it a lot easier, especially whether it be through poetry, music, any type of art. It can be really healing for all parties involved.
Thanks, Jazzy. So I think it's really such a powerful question, especially right now, right? It's Black History Month, and it's actually the 100th year anniversary of the celebration of Black History Month, which used to be what, Negro Appreciation Week, Negro History Week. Thank you, Miss Dottie. See, we're gonna be in conversation with each other, okay? So I think human beings use stories in order to explain ourselves, to be able to explain the world, to be able to understand what is our function, both as members of a society, members of a culture, members of a group, but also as creatures, right? Living on this floating rock in space. And so stories are more than just these sort of ephemeral things that we just sort of are like, oh yeah, they're cute, we like them. Who doesn't enjoy a good book or a good, season of Bridgerton on Netflix? But it goes beyond that. We use stories in order to make sense of ourselves and to make sense of each other. And there's a reason why in this country and across the world, there has been concerted efforts to edit history, right? To edit whose stories get told, to edit which stories are heard and which stories are buried. And the very fact of the existence of Black History Month is in order to tell a fuller story, to tell a fuller story of this nation and to tell a fuller story of a people who have been striving towards freedom under the incredibly oppressive and violent systems that first kidnapped us, took over many of our homelands, and are still in many ways controlling our lives today. So for me, one thing I forgot to mention, me and Jazzy are both May graduates because I also graduated last year. Thank you. With my bachelor's degree, double majors with double majoring in sociology and Africana studies. And for someone who, again, was really determined to only do art or fashion design, that was a significant shift for me. But I remember that the reason I had chosen to do Africana studies and at UMass Boston, shout out to my alma mater, was because it was the only institution in which Africana studies when I was living in Boston at the time that gave it as a full degree program, right? Many other institutions gave it as a or as a certificate, or like surplus classes here and there. But it was really important for me to take that as a course of study, because at the point that I was finally able to go back to school and finish my degree, which was several years, and I would say I graduated with my bachelor's 20 years after graduating with my high school diploma. So it was a very, very long journey. And it was integral for me to do that, to take this and to study what I studied, because I really needed to understand a fuller story of what it meant to be a Black person in the United States. I grew up in New Hampshire. I went through the school system. Let me tell you, it wasn't very robust in terms of giving a full understanding, not only of the contributions, the successes, the lives and the real experiences of Black people across the diaspora, but certainly at the very least African Americans in this country, beyond the most notable of figures, right? We all love Martin Luther King, but I didn't learn about Ida B. Wells until I was in college university. I didn't learn about W.E.B. Du Bois until I was in college university, and having him be that progenitor of sociology, my second area of study, and recognizing that until we are able to tell a fuller story, until we create the space, the time, as well as the opportunity for those stories to be told, we will always be functioning at a deficit. And one of the things that I recognize that as a Black woman, and particularly as a Black immigrant woman, as a Black woman from the diaspora, and as a Black American, is that so often the most harmful aspects of the stories that are told, not only about us as a community of Black people, but of all other people who are not in the dominant culture, right? Who are not part of those who are in power, is that if you do not tell your own story, they will tell your story for you, and it will leave out the majority of your humanity. And so I guess the role that storytelling has is that people cannot help but tell stories. We tell stories to our children, we tell stories to our friends, we tell stories to one another. And the stories that we tell shape the world that we live in, they shape our reality. And when we are able to tell that fuller story, our reality in our world is a much more honest one, and one that we can actually create in a way that actually supports and enables all people to thrive. So,
yeah, yeah. Some things that I'm reflecting on both in Jazzy and Grace's responses. The idea of stories is healing, and really that stories help us to make sense of where we are, but also what has happened before us, right? And how stories pave the way for new possibilities and new ways of understanding the current predicament and all the things. And on top of that, an additional reflection of my own and hearing you two, is there something really beautiful and also kind of risky about what's happening, right? So on the one hand, me asking questions to both of these panelists, right? There's a level of vulnerability that I'm prompting them to share with a crowd of people that some of them you might know, right? But many of y'all, we don't know like that. So there's something really personal and intimate about this moment. And so on the one hand, people say that vulnerability is an important prerequisite to strong and authentic relationship building. And like, fair enough, absolutely, right? Logically. But then on the other side is having to think about vulnerability from a structural or systemic perspective. So if you are the kind of person who is positioned in the world as having to think about what you say, how you say it, why your outcomes are disproportionately different than other people. And on top of that, someone saying, hey, put yourself more at risk by sharing these deep, intimate parts about yourself, it becomes a bit risky, right? There's a negotiation that has to happen in a way that not other people have to do. So I say that because oftentimes in these conversations, people come to me and say, Kevin, like, this is great, but I don't really see color the way that you're describing it. I don't really see that, right? It's easy to really dismiss that. It's easy to dismiss that. And I get the logic, but the problem is, I think it's more productive to ask the question of, if we all are human, why are we not having the same universal human experience? Why are some people disproportionately impacted in a lot of different domains of life in ways that others are not? And then we start to get to different forms of thinking and expansive strategies to address our current moment. So let's get to question 2. And this time I'll be asking questions individually to both Jazzy first and then Grace. So y'all know Jazzy is an incredible poet. Let's snap it up for Jazzy. I mean, why not? Yes. And so I read a piece called Audre Lorde's Poetry is Not a Luxury. And Lorde states that, quote, "It's poetry that we give those ideas which are, until dawn, inform us, about to be birthed, already felt. That distillation of experience from which true poetry springs, births thought as dream, births concept, as feeling, births idea, as knowledge, births and proceeds understanding." So Jazzy, I would love to know, how has poetry shaped how you think about your lived experience as a young Black woman? And what role do you want your poetry to have in the world?
I feel like poetry for me I didn't start writing poetry until freshman year of college, which is kind of late in the game for some people that write poetry.
So you don't care that it was late.
But before that, I always kind of felt like I had something to say. What it was, I didn't know. How I wanted to say it, I didn't know. I had a class, a women in gender studies class, and she had us write, or it wasn't even a poem. She had us do an interview about different women and like how they grew up, different ages, all this other stuff. And I was like, well, can I do a poem? Because I don't have anyone to interview. And she was like, yeah, that's fine. And that poem ended up being Growing Up Ain't Easy. You might have heard it. That was my first poem that I've ever wrote. And it was about my life as a young Black woman growing up, hating my hair, hating my skin, hating how I acted, hating how the other people around me acted. And I felt really lonely. So when it comes to vulnerability and being honest, for me, at first, it felt really lonely saying how I felt because nobody around me understood the same thing. I have a white mom. I didn't grow up with my dad in the home. So I always kind of felt out of place and like people didn't really understand where I was coming from. So when I first started to be vulnerable through my poetry too, I found that other people related to me finally. And it took so long to feel that. And it was a great feeling because for so long being vulnerable put me in such a lonely place. And it ended up transforming into something that drove connection and a lot of connection in my life, a lot of friendships, a lot of love, and I'm grateful for that. So when it comes to poetry for me, I feel like I wouldn't be able to express myself the way I wanted to unless I said a poem, wrote a poem, however you want to say it, I don't know. I'm a really awkward person too, if you pick that up. I'm very awkward, like you just have to bear with me, but when I say my poetry, when I perform my poetry, I don't feel as awkward. And I feel like I can really get what I want to say out, which is amazing. As far as what I want my poetry to do, honestly, I just want people to feel connected to me and I want to feel connected to people. So if they relate to it, awesome. If they don't, great. I just want people to hear me and where I'm coming from, where I've come from. It's a great way to do that. So I'm very, very, very grateful for poetry.
Yeah. You all are going to be clapping a lot. Jazzy, really quick, just because I really appreciated what you just shared. Can you talk to us a bit about what your relationship is or how you think about the importance of being heard? Because I heard you talk about like how your poetry helps to drive connection, how it's important for you to feel heard. What is it about that that's really important for you?
I feel like when you feel heard, you feel like somebody relates to you, like somebody gets where you're coming from. I feel like oftentimes, like I said, like being vulnerable can cause you to feel really lonely. But on the other side of that, it can cause you to feel really connected to people. And yeah, for me, that's just kind of what it is. I just feel really connected to people when I perform my poetry. I get to look at everybody in the audience, see their reactions, see their faces. And you could tell when you say something, when you say a line, a stanza that relates to someone, you can kind of just see it in their eyes. You can see it in their body language that they come from the same place you're coming from. So yeah, that's kind of my answer to that.
Yeah, that reminds me of a line in a book called Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. It's one thing to be looked at and another to be seen. And I think Jazzy's response really encapsulated that for me. So I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing. And moving to Grace, I mean, y'all already know, Grace is a multi-hyphenate with a long list of accolades that I don't have the time to share. But as both an artist and an activist, I understand her work and her lived experience as necessarily intersectional, given the many threads that weave together her creative work and her community work together. So it's not just one here and one over there. It's both happening at the same time, all the time. And during our panel conversation, Grace has shared that her work as an artist is encompassed by the significance of the following quote by Tony Cade Bambara: "The role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible."
And
So with that being said, Grace, I wanted to ask you, what is the significance of Black artists both historically and in the current moment? And what kinds of stories and histories are invoked by the creative work you do?
gosh, that's a good question. So I'll start by sharing that in my last semester of school, which was last spring, I had the opportunity to travel with my Africana Studies department to Selma, Alabama by bus in celebration to join the celebration for the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. When we got there, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew that it was a journey I wanted to be a part of and I wanted to go. And on our way back, when we were traveling back, we stopped in DC. It was kind of an impromptu thing. The organizers were like, you know what? It is just not, the opportunity is too good. We've got to stop at the African American Museum, the Smithsonian Museum, before we head all the way back to Massachusetts. And so the experience in Selma was incredibly powerful. And there's not enough time right now for me to really dig into that. But if anybody is curious, gosh, please get me or ask a question, because it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. But the visit to the museum as well was also incredibly powerful. For those who have not been to the African American Museum in DC, it is multiple floors. There's no way that you can see everything in one go, but I sure did try. I spent to concentrate my time in two exhibits. One was the exhibit that they had at the time, which really focused on the Black diaspora and the link between African American history and Black diasporic history, to really connect and remind everyone that slavery, the slave system, and the colonialism, interlocking systems. Right. And so that exhibit in and of itself was powerful. But the second exhibit I wanted to be sure that I spent a significant amount of time in was the art museum, the art exhibits, which was on the top floor. That first exhibit was on the bottom floor. That art exhibit was on the top floor. And what I saw when I went there were expressions of Black life through art, through sculpture, through music, through dance, through jewelry, through the artistic expression, and it was there. The exhibit was full, of course, of Black artists, both African American artists, but also Black artists from across the world. And what I saw was reflections of my childhood. I saw my mother. I saw the things that I used to love and do when I was a child. I saw my aunties, my uncles. I saw pieces of myself reflected in both the sculptures, the physical art, as well as the auditory art that I was also hearing, the music, the poetry. And so the role that art has, right, is that it not only reflects, right? It reflects our reality in ways that can have a much more powerful effect than even just hearing someone go on and on and on and tell a whole long story, right? You see some image and it stops you in your tracks and you just stand there for long minutes, just seeing yourself reflected in the drape of a dress, in the glistening of, of a tear in someone's eye. Like, you just see so much woven in. So art reflects history. It reflects our experience. It reflects our everyday, right? But art also dreams. It dreams of something better. It dreams of something that was ephemeral and temporary, but that is, that is missed, that is desired. So it dreams and it tells the story of the things that we dream. It also envisions futures that have not been realized yet. And that is one of the most powerful things with that quote that I love so much. And it was so funny when I was telling Kevin about this. I had seen that quote during a trip to San Francisco several years back, just in the window of a storefront. And it stopped me in my tracks, and I took a picture of it, and I've carried that quote with me for years. And the reason that it is such a powerful thing to think about the role that art plays both in our history and in our lives, especially as Black people, is that it is through art that we not only are able to see that which we see every day in spaces where we often are not reflected, right? But we are also able to see what is entirely possible but has not been created yet, or at least at a systematic level, right? Because nothing comes out of nothing, right? Perhaps there's pockets of that vision, of that future in our relationships with loved ones, in the communities that we organize with, that we do, and the colleagues that we work alongside. It exists, often exists in small ways. And when we use art in order to tell the story of what is possible, then it not only draws other people in, it comes like a seed that starts to grow and root, and all of us, all who see and witness it. And there's a reason why there's such concerted efforts to censor certain types of art, to censor certain types of artists, because of the power that it has to really move people. Because and that's exactly it, to imagine something that wasn't there before. And when people imagine what wasn't possible before, then we can create, because everything we do, from the chairs that we're sitting in, to the building that we're in, to the roads that we've walked, to the city and the state, everything that we have used and touch and create started as an idea. And art creates the idea that something better is possible. And when that idea gets planted, then we can build it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is already very rich, and I hope the people on Zoom feel the same way, because I'm listening with different things in my head, so I'm taking notes so that I don't get sidetracked. One, just to keep on the thread of storytelling as an art form and not just cultural expression, one thing that I really have been sitting with, that I think artists in all contexts have taught me, is the importance of dealing with uncertainty. So when I think of an artist's initial idea, and then they start putting something together, whether for Jazzy, it's the beginnings of a poem that then has the scraps of an idea, but she might like discard one thing, keep the other thing, right? There's like this back and forth that artists are really good at holding. And I always wonder about the ability to start with an idea, but then not know what's going to be on the other side and be okay with that, right? Grace talked about art as futures not yet realized. And so what that can induce in people is sometimes this anxiety of, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? What's the answer? And if I had the answer, I wouldn't be here right now, right? So I'm wondering from you two, in terms of your creative work, what is your relationship with uncertainty? And I'm wondering what lessons uncertainty has taught you.
Me and uncertainty, we love each other. We have a great relationship. For me, when I'm writing a poem, when I first started, I used to be focused on the finished product. I was like, okay, where am I going to go with this poem? What do I want to say? How am I going to say it? What words am I going to use? And then as I started creating more poems and more art, I realized it's not so much about the end product. It's about the journey getting there. And sometimes the outcome's not good. But the journey that it took to get there is always amazing. And I learned so much about myself. Like when I'm sitting and writing, sometimes it feels like I'm talking to a therapist, but it's really just my notes app, but they can't say anything back. So it's just me yapping the whole time. But I feel like, at least with uncertainty, I've learned to embrace it and to love it because nothing is certain except death. At least I've learned that. So when it comes to writing, when it comes to art, I don't so much focus on the finished product. It's more the journey that it is to get me there. And when I say journey, I just mean like the feelings that come up, my thoughts, my inspirations, all of that. They really speak to me. So I try to do my best to verbalize that and to make it into something worth sharing.
Absolutely. Before we get to Grace, I chuckled a bit after Jazzy shared because I was like, wow, what is certain outside of death? And somebody said to me recently, Kev, look, at the end of the day has got to end. I was like, oh, nice. Anyway, now, beautiful transition.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think uncertainty. So my relationship with uncertainty. So I've been a multidisciplinary artist or multimedia artist for a long time. And so when I was a child, I used to draw and sketch. I would write stories that I would torture my classmates with. I wrote poetry for a long time, especially after being introduced to the works of Maya Angelou and others. I've danced. I've been part of an West African dance company for several years, although I've recently retired from that and performing. I've sung. I used to paint and I still do, although my paints are starting to dry up a little bit. So we'll have to get back to it sooner than later. And a lot of the time in my early years, especially as I became an adolescent and I walked into young womanhood, and I really struggled, very similar to you, Jazzy, with my identity, with feeling so othered and alien all the time, in a state where I was often the only Black child in my class. I was the only Black child in my peer group. A lot of my family didn't live here. The community was small, and I felt very lonely. And so oftentimes I would use art in order to find some reflection of myself. And for a long time, especially when I was in the first 2 years of art college, I would do a lot of self-portraits, and there was so much uncertainty for me in that art making process because I never knew what I would come out with, right? I would work on a piece for months, sometimes years, often being unhappy with it, right? I know you know the process, right? Being very unhappy with it, not quite knowing where it was going, and oftentimes not even knowing where it would end, right? And it was a very smart art instructor of mine who told me that you have to choose your ending when it comes to whatever you create. You have to find the end. You have to accept the end, because it might not, unless you make that choice, it will never come, right? And so there was the relationship with uncertainty was one that I was very familiar with, because so much of life, especially in those early years, felt uncertain. I didn't know what would happen to my mother and me. I didn't know when we would get our papers. I didn't know what would we do, right? How we would make ends meet, how I would be able to finish school and find love, or any of the thousand and million things that run through anyone's mind as they try to find their place in the world. And so, but over time, right, as I've gotten older, and I grew up on the stories that my mom would tell me when it comes to having faith. My mom is absolutely a woman of God. She has been a church-going, God-loving woman my whole life, as is most of my family, deeply, deeply religious. And I had not really been. That never seemed to matter, because it was still the through line of her faith, the through line of her certainty, because she was always certain that God would come through and that God would never abandon us, and that we would find the light, even if it would take a lifetime. And as an 16-year-old, 18-year-old, 20-something-year-old, and patience was my all I had was impatience. But it wasn't until as I've gotten into my 30s that I began to understand that the relationship with uncertainty on the flip side is a relationship with faith, is a relationship that reminds us that even if we cannot see the mountaintop, even if we cannot see the promised land, we know it is there. And our goal and our task is simply to continue on the journey. It is simply to continue doing the work, and eventually, and maybe it will be in this lifetime, I hope it is, but even if it is not, we will still reach it. And so my relationship with uncertainty is definitely one of faith.
Yeah, this is really beautiful. 10 minutes left. Thank you so much. On Zoom, there's 10 minutes left. Recently, Tracy McMillan Cottom Stick. It's a book of essays, and there's a particular chapter that I think really is applicable to our context right now. And in that essay, she offers this sobering reminder that while Black women are absolutely trustworthy sources of their own experiences, Black women do not have what Dr. Cottom terms the reputational capital to be engaged on a rigorous and serious level. Now, this is important because for me, two things come up with that. So one, when Black women experience systemic and structural neglect, it becomes the question, well, what does that mean for the kinds of possibilities we're leaving behind that as a result render disposable? And two, more practically, Dr. Cottom says that what this means is you can be considered a very rigorous, smart, and intellectual person without ever having engaged, interviewed, or even talked to a Black woman. That's really interesting, right? So for Jazzy and Grace, I'm wondering what's important for our audience to understand about the connections between Black women, the traditions of storytelling, and working towards liberation. Because it's one thing to talk through Black history in a more general sense, but given that we have Black women on the panel, I think there's a very specific experience that I'm wanting to highlight here, because I think that, again, to Dr. Cottom's point, it's really easy to dismiss the expertise that's living in this room right now.
For me, I feel like storytelling is liberation in and of itself. Being able to say how I feel, being able to talk about the things that I've experienced and gone through in this life is very liberating for me. And sometimes it's easy to think of, well, is anyone even listening to what I'm saying? Is anyone hearing me? Are they seeing me? But I've kind of, I don't want to say lost faith, but I've kind of stopped expecting people to hear me and see me. And I'm at a point where it's like, I'm going to share my art, and whether you hear it, whether you don't hear it, that's up to you. But I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. I'm sharing my truth. I'm talking about what matters to me. And to me, that is liberation. And that's freedom as well. Just being able to say what I want to say and not caring if you want to hear it or not. So for me, that's what liberation is, especially when it comes to storytelling. Just being able to do it is liberation and freedom in and of itself.
Amen. So I think I would say a couple things. One first is that Black women and Black femmes, our contributions, our research, our artistic expressions, everything that we give to the world moves the world, regardless of the fact of whether it is considered, even credited. Mm-hmm. The contributions of Black women and femmes have completely reshaped the world and will continue to reshape the world as long as Black women and Black femmes exist on this planet. And so I think it is important, as we recognize, right, that there is a continued dismissal of the power of those contributions, the impact cannot be ignored. It can be denied, but it cannot be ignored, because every time it happens, every time something from us is given, it changes how we see things, how we share things, it changes the fabric of our realities. And so dismiss all you can, all you want, the impact is undeniable. The second thing I wanted to say is that as a student of social science, one thing that sociology taught me and continues to teach me is the ways that culture, both our cultural norms, our cultural ideas, anything that a society and a culture, a group, all of those unspoken and written rules of how to be in that group, to raise our children, how to be members of that group, those cultural, that cultural transmission more often than not is done by women, because women are raising children. It's not solely done by women. I want to give our men the credit, and our masculine presenting folks the credit they deserve, because culture is transmitted by all of us, right? But the primary cultural transmitters of most cultures is usually women. And so storytelling is how we transmit those cultural rules, those cultural ideas, those ways of being, right? When you are speaking with your child and you share lessons with them through stories. And so stories start young. They have to, because in order for us to understand, again, how to be in the world, and what is our function, what is our role, how do we explain other people's functions and roles, we use stories to do that. We use stories to transmit ideas. We use stories to transmit rules and regulations of how to engage with yourself, with others. And so it is really important, again, that to recognize, I'll go back to my first point, we can deny and dismiss all we want. The impact still is undeniable. And when we give credit to where credit is due, then we can more fully see how that process happens, why it happens. And I think for Black women and Black femmes, what I have come to understand, I have learned so much from other Black women. And in particular, as an African woman living in the United States, I give so much credit and so many props to the African American women, the thinkers, the scholars, the artists who have created a foundation of understanding for me to be able to finally answer the questions that I grew up in a family that struggled to make sense of what in the world was happening here. Why it was so hard to have the most basic of needs met. Why the struggle, even though I come from a very poor family, the level of mental and physical degradation that was experienced here was nothing like what we experienced in Congo. And so then what in order to explain the difference, to explain and to answer the question of what is this, those African American women gave me the language and the framework to be able to explain it. And that language and framework, we owe them everything, because it's exactly that which we continue to use in order to resist what we're experiencing today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just in the spirit of time, can you please give one more round of applause for Jazzy and Grace? I'm imagining that those on Zoom are also clapping. So thank you for the claps. I was told that we are moving to Q&A, and I believe Mario was giving us a primer on the rules for engagement. I would like to say, and this is just my practice as a moderator, I mentioned earlier that vulnerability is always significant, and there's a gift in being able to hear the stories and perspectives of people like Jazzy and Grace. But I hope that it goes acknowledge that as you all think about the questions you will ask, if a panelist decides not to answer it, it is not, please don't take it personal. I'm just making sure that people understand folks have different life experiences and different seasons of life that might dictate what they're able to answer in a room full of people that they may not know as well. So I just think this is a practice of humanizing our panelists and not just expecting that they answer every personal question you might have. So I really want us to ask questions with a level of depth, but also care. And remembering that we have humans here at the table being able to answer questions, but don't take it personal if they decide no. Yeah? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Is this on? Okay, great. Love it. Hi, everyone. Star Steele, I'm the program assistant at Kevin Pajaro-Marinez. Thank you for being here. Just to get started real quick, Kevin said like really well. So, you know this by now, but respectful. Use the microphone. We ask that you stand up speak clearly and directly into the mic. Over to you, please raise your hand. Please listen, don't interrupt, share airtime. So much time. But be mindful that good intentions can still have harmful consequences. Please put your questions in the chat and we'll have some to the mic. So any questions? Oh, okay, on the opposite side of the room.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jennifer Muhammad, and I am functionally from New Jersey. And I just want to functionally. So I am a Phillips Exeter parent. My daughter's a senior at Phillips Exeter, and I am up here while she is in school. So I just want to thank the people of New Hampshire. Everybody here is so much nicer than people in New Jersey. I'm like, I'm shocked. But anyway, I just want to start off by just thanking everybody for having Kevin Pajaro-Marinez and letting him host, because I just have to tell you all, the kids at Philip Exeter love him.
Too kind.
Love him. I mean, no, really. My daughter has said that when she marries her boyfriend, and I know you know who her boyfriend is.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
She has said that there are not very many people from Exeter who she will invite to the wedding, but you can come.
Okay.
So
I'll be there.
it's like you're off. But I do have a serious question for Grace. So Grace, I have been to the African American Museum in DC, and it is mind-blowing. But I wanted to know your thoughts on what is going on with the slavery exhibit in Philadelphia. And I don't know if any of you have seen that, but it is wonderful, and it really intertwines, I guess, the role of George Washington's role in terms of having slaves in Philadelphia. And there were murals, and I mean, it's great. And for those of you who haven't been watching the news, it got taken down, but I think they had until Friday, yesterday at 5 p.m. to put everything back up. And yes, because Philadelphia sued, and the federal judge, I guess, overturned it. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that. And because that was a blatant attempt to, I guess, control the narrative, right, of the role of slavery in the history of Philadelphia. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that. And, you know, just really just where do you see things going in terms of other oral narratives of ours that you think the administration may try to attack?
Yeah, no, thank you. That is such a great question. I actually did not know about what was happening in Philadelphia because I've been following so closely the attempts by the current administration to really kind of chokehold the DC Museum in terms of what they were able to display and say about American history. Because it's not just African American history; it is just American history. And so, but what I would say about that trend, right, is there's a reason why those things get censored, right? There's a reason why there are attempts to try to silence, to throttle, to deny the truth, the full truth of our history, to claim that, you know, that either that slavery was a blip or sort of a fever dream, and it wasn't that big of a deal, but now it's over and we can all celebrate freedom. Yay, 250 years. But I think what's important about that is recognizing the role that resistance has in pushing back against those types of attempts to erase who we are. I mean, sure, right? We're still continuing to fight to be able to tell a full story, a fuller story of our own history. Just recently, the state House of Representatives in New Hampshire passed a bill that would make it so that certain types of subjects having to do with the systemic analysis of our history in our systems would not be able to be taught in schools. And so it is a part of a long legacy. I mean, we thought we won the fight when we were able to get this quote unquote divisive concepts law off of the books because it was struck down in court. But we're seeing attempt after attempt to find other ways to censor what has actually happened in this country. So one of the things that I would say, just to, I don't want to go on for too long, is that resistance to those efforts is key. It is so easy to rewrite history in real time. In my work as a policy advocate, I often find myself talking with other elected leaders who not even a year ago were spewing some of the most hateful, vile things you can imagine to justify the programs or policies that they now are benefiting from. And then in an attempt to have full accountability for those programs and policies, they have now rewritten the story to be completely not about what they originally were pushing against, right? The original, the groups and the communities that they to throw under the bus. Now they are completely rewriting it. So it is incumbent on us not only to be paying attention to these efforts to censor and to deny what has truly happened, but also to be weighing in on it, right? Joining that fight, joining that resistance, but also not just fighting back, but also countering it with the fact that by knowing who we truly are and where we've come from, that makes us stronger. We can uplift the fact that yes, we have made significant mistakes in the building of this nation, significant ones from the inception of this country. That does not deny the absolute beauty, the amazing contributions of the people who said, if we are to live up to the values that we say we have as a nation, which are bigger than any singular person, did not originate with the founding fathers. If to truly live up to those values, that is why we fight. That is why we fight for better. And each generation, we get a little bit closer. But denying that truth does not serve us, and in fact weakens us in ways that are completely and utterly unacceptable and utterly unnecessary.
Thank you, Grace. As a state senator, I saw these horrible bills up there, and I wanted to ask Jazzy, you know, given all that's going on in New Hampshire, how are your students doing? You know, how are they doing? What stories you're hearing from them? You know, how are their lives?
I want to say they're doing good, but every student has a different story, so I can't speak for all of them. It seems like they're good. Especially like working with the club Open Minds in Action, like seeing how much they care as young people, how much work they're willing to do, the fight they're willing to put in. It really gives me hope, and I hope that my hope that I get from them goes back into them, and it's just like a big hope cycle because they really, really inspire me every day. Students just did a walkout not too long ago. Sharing their opinions on things, and I can't help but admire their strength and the courage that they have. Every day they inspire me. I'm very, very lucky and grateful to be surrounded by the students that I'm surrounded by. I work at a very diverse school, which is so amazing. I love it so, so much. So hearing different stories, hearing different experiences, and just different people all around. It's really amazing. And they seem to be holding up okay. And they have a lot of fight in them. They're not tired yet, like we can see. They have a lot of fight left. So they give me a lot of inspiration and hope when it comes to that.
That's great.
Thank you.
It's Jazzy, gonna stay on you for a second. How do some of the things you brought up today show up in your pedagogy while you're actually in front of students using your oratory in that way?
Well, for me, I'm still a young teacher, so that gets me far. It's hard nowadays to talk about certain things that you want to talk about. You have to be really careful. And that's a truth for a lot of us in this room. But for me, just being vulnerable and just like sharing my stories. Sometimes like I'll share little anecdotes about me when I was younger, or we just relate on a lot of things because we are so close in age right now. So that helps a lot. When it comes to my teaching style, I'm very open and I pivot. That's the word I always use. I'm always pivoting. So sometimes they'll say something in class, like we have a lot of discussions, and right now, we just read Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. So that's about the Iranian Revolution, all of that stuff going on. So I can kind of skate by with the questions I ask if I like pertain it to that. But yeah, it's a little bit hard right now.
Yeah.
It is a little bit hard to navigate and to know what you can say, what you can't say. Just being real and vulnerable. And if they ask me a question, I try to answer it as honestly as I can. And I think they do respect me for that because I respect them and I respect what they have to say too. So.
Man.
Absolutely. No. No, I was gonna say you can go. Are there any questions on Zoom on hold that we haven't got? Oh no, okay, great, cool, you got it.
So my question as William, how are you taking care of your mental health?
Who are you asking?
Oh, okay. Gang.
Gen Z, I'm Gen Z.
Who wants to start?
I'll
start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thank you for that question. It is a process. I feel like the ways that I take care of my mental health is by doing kind of the not so sexy things, right? Taking my medication, sleeping, trying to get 8 hours of sleep, eating regularly, drinking water, reminding myself that, not just reminding myself, being in tune, in alignment with myself enough to know that when I start to burn out, like before I even burn out, when I start to dysregulate, when I start to feel tired, when I know I've been in this body for 38 years, I know it fairly well. And when I don't listen to it is when the problems start. And one of the things that I'm very grateful for from our generation, as a fellow millennial, is how, have been to really engage both with what our mental health needs are, but how that's also tied with our physical needs. And one of the things that I've had to recognize in doing the work that I do is that if I don't hold the line for what I value, what is important to have in my life, my therapist put this really, really well, and I'll share this with all of you, is she reminded me, especially as a woman, because she's also a woman, is that we often forget to include ourselves as we take care of. We take care of everybody else. We take care of our loved ones, our colleagues, our children, and our pets, and then we are always at the very bottom of the list. And then when we get to the bottom of the list, we will easily just sacrifice ourselves. So I try to hold the line on things that are really important to me. Part of the reason I was late this morning, for instance, is that I had to take a yoga class on Sundays that I do not miss. I really miss it because the impact that it has had to ground me, to help me regulate, to allow me the space, the opportunity to practice in my body and nowhere else are the types of things that carry me through in other ways. So it's all about really being attuned to those physical needs, but also doing all the types of things that bring me joy, because there's multiple types of rest. And that if I may be sleeping 8 hours in a week, but I haven't rested with spending time with my loved ones. I haven't rested by creating something. So really being intentional and kind of a hard ass about certain things that I simply won't sacrifice for myself.
Oh, yeah, you got it. Oh, you got it. I can. Okay, fine. I'll switch it up. So very, very practically, the forms of care that I engage in now, as a DEI practitioner, right? When people first meet me and they hear my title, Assistant Director of Equity and Inclusion at Phillips Exeter, it's like, oh my gosh, did you hear what's happening on the news? Let's chill. So there's something about how your humanity gets reconfigured depending on the type of work that you do. I think especially when you're in a body that looks like ours, and then there's all these things that get projected onto you before people allow you the flexibility of like, hey, what's funny to you these days? Like, what makes you happy these days? Like, what shows are you watching? So it usually is secondary because people are so caught up on trying to extract from you all the time. that they miss out on the opportunity to know you. And so, care for me these days is really like, outside of thinking of things, I love music, and I recently have been diving into the history of house music, which growing up, I made synonymous house music with white people. But I realized that house music is the greatest genre. It's amazing. It's amazing. I have been knee deep in a genre that has so much rich culture. And I'm so mad that I shortchanged that vision of what it could be because I had this idea of how it was being represented to me at the time. So I'm glad that being older has allowed me the flexibility to like revisit something that actually has a lot of richness and has brought me a lot of like joy. And it's totally separate from my work. I have aspirations to learn how to DJ, not because I want to be a local SoundCloud artist, but because I just want to vibe and engage in a skill set that doesn't have me in my head intellectualizing everything all the time. Because there's a level of care in that too, when you're not hypothesizing about how the world is going to harm you tomorrow. And just being able to be present in a moment where you don't have to think about that. Just being able to relish in the momentary privilege of being, which a lot of Black folks don't often get to do. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing to engage in care right now. Yeah.
For me, I'm going to be really predictable, and I'm going to say writing, of course. Helps my mental health because there's a lot going on up here, and sometimes just putting it on a page and setting it aside is the best thing for me. I don't always have to pick that page back up. Sometimes I could just write and get it out and leave it there, which is really awesome for me. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like too much is going on and I can't even find the words to explain what I'm feeling or thinking or experiencing. And that's when I kind of have to understand that I don't always have to put out art as an artist. I can take a second to breathe and to experience things. That's what I'm learning most recently is like, I don't always have to keep writing. I don't always have to stay on top of my poetry game or have a bunch of new poems ready. Like I can just take a second to breathe. And that's what's been helping my mental health recently is kind of just taking that second and realizing that I don't always have to put things out. I don't always have to be a creator. Sometimes I can just look at other creatives and get inspired and take time for myself.
Yeah. I love how you all clap after Africa. All the contributions. Like, the space that does that, keep doing it though. Like, take it. Yeah. Keep doing that. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. The national response to the Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show.
Sorry. Yes.
May not even need to continue.
But I love what you're going.
I preface how it clearly illustrated a whole lot of really ugly anti-Blackness, anti-immigrant bias, monolingualism in the United States, but also a glorious example of storytelling and uplifted an enormous amount of joy for a lot of people. Just interested to hear your thoughts from many of the panelists.
Yeah.
Please, y'all.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to start? Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You got it.
Well, for me, I'm Hispanic, so I was really excited to watch it. I loved the show. I really, like you said, it was a lot of storytelling. There was a bunch of different like locations or traditions, or even just like the foods, the fruits that they were talking about, the dancing. It all just was really beautiful, and it all told the story. So for me, that was really amazing. And similar to what we've been talking about, not everybody wants to hear that story. Not everybody's ready to hear that story. But I think continuing to put it out and forcing them to see it, forcing them to hear it, I think is, like you said earlier, it's going to leave that impact whether they want that to happen or not. So I think when it comes to like Bad Bunny, the performance, it left an impact. Whether or not they liked it is up to them, but it definitely left an impact. And I'm so proud of him. And that was just a really awesome moment for me, and I'm sure for a bunch of other people as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I loved the Super Bowl halftime show. I will say I was one of the, several 100 million people that tuned in just for the halftime show. I'm not a football fan. And I will first disclaimer that the NFL is not going to save us. And I love the halftime show, but I always think it's really important to to couch it in that it is such an important stage, and it's not the solution by itself, right? But what I think was particularly powerful about this halftime show, and I agree with you, the storytelling that Bad Bunny shared his story, right? He talked about he added elements of his story, but he connected it right to the story of his people, so his fellow, Puerto Ricans, but he connected it to the larger story of America. And one of the most powerful images for me that came out of that whole performance was him holding up that football with the crowd of people behind him from every nation in the Americas. And he said in that football said, "We are America," right? In recognition that so often the one story, and I will give credit to Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who had that famous TED Talk about the I forget exactly the term that she used, but what is it? Yeah, exactly. The single story. And now the single story does not tell the whole story. And we have been telling a single story of America since it's the inception of this country, which is that there is only one America. And that America is the United States, ignoring the countless other countries that make up this entire hemisphere, both north, south, and of course, in the Caribbean. And I think what that does, right, is that opens up a door, right, to start to interrogate, well, if we're only telling the story of one America, does that not call into question all of the policies and reasonings and the stories that we use to create the foundation to make the excuses as to why certain people are allowed in and certain people are not allowed out? This landmass that we call the Americas, and all of the surrounding ones in the oceans have been around much longer than the story of the United States. This landmass is not 250 years old. People have been living here longer than 250 years, right? The borders that we now have came much later than the people who were actually here and have both originated here and have been up and down the entire length of the North South America and all of that. So I think that the show was fun. It was bright. It was exactly the type of thing that I think a lot of us need right now. And oftentimes during really, really dark moments in history is where we make human beings produce some of the most incredible art. And I think not only is Bad Bunny's art so powerful for this moment in particular, I think it was also part of an ongoing legacy and a tradition that I think a lot of Black and brown people hold very much to our core, is that our individual story is a collective story. And I think I want to just leave with this, that one of the things that I love most about the African American women who have taught me, given me the foundation and the framework, and a lot of my thinking is particularly Bell Hooks in her series All About Love, where she talks about that love is a collective action. That love is itself a action, right? Is more than a verb. It is something that we do that is done not only for ourselves, but for others. And when we tell our story as individual, that story is not just about us as a singular person. It is about our family. It is about our community. It is about our people. And when we tell that whole story, we tell a truth that cannot be denied. So those those folks, let's not even say the people in the white supremacist systems that are enraged at what Bad Bunny and others like him have done. That to me is exactly why we have to tell these stories, and we have to tell it in connection to a much larger story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, retweet, right? Yeah, same. I'm the kind of person who likes to ask questions, especially as a Black Latino. And one of the things that I thought about after relishing in the fact that Bad Bunny had this platform to engage in some really incredible storytelling, despite Turning Point USA doing this whole other thing, whatever. Absolutely. Yeah. The very few people who saw it, right. One of the things that I thought about right after is had this is all accounting for the fact that Bad Bunny has done a lot for Puerto Rico, uplifting narratives, right? Uplifting Black and brown people respectively in his community. Like I can hold that. So before I say this, especially for the people on Zoom who might identify as Latina, I'm asking you to hold this with me because I think it's an important tension that or at least I hope it's an important tension I'm bringing up. Had Bad Bunny been a dark-skinned Black Latino man, would be having the same reaction, right, around his contributions to the culture, all the things that we revere about him, would they be the same if he looked different phenotypically? And I ask that because what I've learned from a systemic structural oppression perspective is that we are willing to uplift the narratives and voices of the people who are in proximity to sorry, let me rephrase. I want to make sure I'm clear. We are willing to uplift people who have the characteristics of those who we deem more palatable, more accessible, kinder, right? And those have implication for the ways that we perceive people. So if dark-skinned Latino people who have been in reggaeton way before Bad Bunny don't have the notoriety that Bad Bunny has, it doesn't mean that Bad Bunny's bad. Let's be clear. Bad Bunny is incredible. Right? Like, he's amazing. There's been so many people that paved the way so that Bad Bunny could be. And I always wonder, where are they?
Yeah.
Right? They're not in the conversation in the same way, right? They don't have access to the NFL as a national stage to project important messages because part of my theory is that I think our nation understands what happens when people develop a consciousness that's centered around Black people, dark-skinned Black people in particular. So I say that to say that we can love something and critique it from a place of care and love to help us ask harder questions that position us to be in community in a much more meaningful and authentic way. It becoming like, oh, you just want to hate on Bad Bunny. No, I love what Bad Bunny's doing, but I also want to complicate our love for him and what it means for the people who have historically contributed to a genre that he has been able to leverage in a way that they have not. Yeah.
I think you would like that.
Okay, that's all we have time for. Thank you everyone for your questions. And Quincy's going to close us out.
Hello. Can you hear me? Oh, it's
No, it was on there.
Oh, it is working.
Yeah.
All right, great. Cool. All right. Well, thank you all very much for that panel. Can we give them a round of applause for that? They do like clapping. I like that. So there are just four things. There are many things that I could say to highlight what I heard today, but I'm just going to touch on four, go through a couple things, and then get you all out of here. So first thing, at the end of the day has to end. I've been loving that one. I say it myself, but I think that goes for our Tea Talk series as well. This is the last one of this month, so thank you all for attending. If you have some other things, I am a sociology major as well, so I love that. And I just loved hearing the connections between the Black diaspora and African American history, and I think that this panel is even a great representation of that as well. So thank you all for that. Something else that came up for me was the thought of imagining something that wasn't there before, and I think that it came up as art is one of the things that do that, but I think our whole entire series has talked upon that, especially when it comes to African American oratory and just how simply that is rooted in imagining something that has not existed. So whoever said that, thank you for that. And my final takeaway is that self-care is just forever important. So I hope that you all are practicing that in some way, shape, or form. With all those said, I'd like to thank the audience, both in person and online, our volunteers, our sponsors, the Black Heritage staff as well, Black Heritage Trail staff as well, sponsors. They're up there, but I'm going to read them too. Episcopal Church of New Hampshire, Wentworth Douglas Hospital, ACLU, Shaheen Finney. Well, there's another Shaheen, it's spelled differently. Great. St. John's Church, Shaheen and Gordon, St. George's Church, New Hampshire Center for Justice and Equity, New Hampshire Humanities, and Melanie Levake. As far as volunteers, Diane Stradling, Nor Shoup, Linda Cunningham, Valerie Sousa, Karen Jacoby, Shelley Hartz, Ann Romney, Sarah Schumann, and then we have some upcoming events. As you can see there, we are going to be unveiling the Own a Judge mural on the side of our building on May 21st, which is Own a Judge's Day in New Hampshire. We have the 250th anniversary celebration for the United States. We are going to be doing a guided bus tour that will be going around certain parts of the seacoast. That'll be on June 28th. And then in September, we have a replica ship of the Amistad coming to Portsmouth Harbor. That is going to be in September. More details to come with that. There's also a survey in your... it's a QR code that you have to do that's in your panel. It's also that QR code as well. With that being said, thank you all for coming out and get home safely.
Thank you.